Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of RobotC for LEGO Mindstorms, using the 3.6 version. So today, music is by Unite the Skies. You probably guessed that. Alright, so today we are learning how to send information from the slave back to the master, getting feedback. And so we'll go over that. So I've kind of already set up the basic code that gets communication going one way, and I've got previous tutorials if you want to check that out. But so for the slave program, we're going to need to send stuff. So I'm just going to copy the function in the master. This is the master 2-byte, and this function with these parameters will be helpful in the slave function when we send stuff. So I'll just put it in right here, and I'll add F7, and bam, lots of weird things happen. It's got an error, and undefined variable outgoing message is saying, what the heck? What's this? You're not telling me what it is. And so I'll just copy that name, and here I'll say ubyte outgoing message, and I'll just say I want to send back 4 values equals, and I'll give it some values, and hit F7, and the error goes away. But just because the error goes away, that doesn't mean all the problems are fixed. This 4 needs to be the same as that, and so which needs to be the same as this. So there's 4 numbers here, there's 4 numbers here. I'm gonna make this 4 right there, because otherwise it's saying we're only that number specifies the length in bytes of your outgoing message, of whatever's right here, and the same is with this. It's right there. And so this is going to send a message to something else. The default is interesting. We'll get to that later, but mailbox 1. And so that mailbox 1 is the mailbox of the master. This is checking its own mailbox, because this is reading the message, this is writing the message, so hopefully that makes sense. But even that being said, we still have a problem. And that goes back to this little line right here. The master needs to send, the thing that's going to send messages is going to need to send the messages slower than the receiver is processing them. And that's why the slave has wait 1 msec 1, and the master has wait 1 msec 2. This is going to wait 2 milliseconds before it goes and does more stuff. This is going to wait 1 millisecond before it goes and does more stuff. And that's so that the slave is more on top of the messages than the master. But if the slave is also going to send the message, and the master is going to receive it sometime, then the slave will be sending it twice as fast as the master, and so we've got a problem. And so there's many ways of fixing this, but the one that I came up with, and I think this is the easiest to understand, is we are only going to send messages. We're only going to send a message every so often, like not every time we go through this while loop. Like, goes, the program reads that, and then it reads this, and then it reads that, and then it reads that, and then it does it all over again. Not all the time do we want to actually send a message, and so how we do that is we have something called a timer. So we'll say timer equals 0. There's a number, and its name is timer, and its initial value is 0, and we're gonna say if the value is 0, then do what's in there. And so basically, timer is 0, starts the program, goes into the while loop, reads a message, checks its inbox, and then if timer is 0, which it is right now, then it'll do this thing, and then we'll say timer equals 5. And double equals, that just means check timer. Single equals, that means assign a value to timer. So yeah, that's what that's for. And so now timer is 5, and the next time it goes through the while loop, 5 is not 0, and so it doesn't do this anymore. But we want to change timer somewhere else so it goes back to 0, because if we just left it right here, then it's only going to send one message, because once timer is 5, you're stuck. There's nothing else that's going to fix it. So we're going to add that part in that fixes it. Oops. And that is timer minus minus. What this does is if timer, let's say timer is 5, and so it doesn't do that, it just skips over to the else, and it's like, okay, fine. and then it does timer minus minus, which means subtract 1, and so now timer's 4. And so it goes, time 4 is not 0, it does this, now timer's 3. It does that all until it gets back to 0, and when it is 0, then it gets in here, sends a message, sets timer back to 5, and so this delay is, this only does the, it only sends message every 5 milliseconds instead of every time, which is what we want it to do. Alright, and then I'm going to actually set these values to something so that they sound, you know, so when we look at it on the master program, it's not just zeros, which is kind of boring and very suspicious. On the master program, well, back to the slave program, we'll copy ccmd message read. In the master program, I'll just put it in, like, it doesn't really matter where you're putting it, but I guess I'll just put it right here. ccmd message read. But we compile the program, and it's like, you're mean, you don't tell me what things are. And so it's saying, hey, incoming message, what the heck is that? Well, we'll fix that. ubyte, incoming message. Now, we want this array to be exactly the same as the outgoing here. Well, like, those numbers can be different because those numbers will get sent, but it has to be 4 if it's 4 there. It's 4 here. 0, 0, 0, 0. And, can't remember if I said this before, but this outgoing message is totally different than this outgoing message because this is in the master program. I can name a variable what I want it. The slave doesn't know the variables in the master program. That's off limits. You know, I could, for the slave can't access programs or the program on the master. You know, it all goes through. Anyway, this variable is unrelated with this variable. I can't assign the values by saying this and then. I hope that makes sense. Hit F7, error goes away. Now I'm going to teach you a new trick, and the trick's pretty cool, I think. So I want to display, actually, that right there. That needs to be a 4 because it's incoming message is 4, and outgoing message is 4, and so that needs to be a 4 too. I'm going to teach you a trick. We want to display, well, I want to display all the 4 values on the screen, but we could have more. Yeah, we could have 8 values or 16 values or whatever. Here is a way to do that. We've done for loops in the past. I'm going to show you 2 again. I know you might hate it, but really, I use for loops when I program at my internship. I use the most out of anything. So for int I equals 0, I is less than, and then I could stop right here. I could either do that, or I could do something cooler, and I'll come back to that. I plus plus. So this is going to cycle through all of the elements of incoming message, and so that's 4. It's got 4 things, so we're going to count from 0, 1, 2, 3, and then at 4 it's going to be like 4 is not less than 4, and it just gets out of there and it's done. But this right here, this is what's called a hard code. It's hard coding something, and if I decide that I want to send, I want to get 5 numbers back, then I have to change that number and that number. I will show you a different way of doing things. There's a function called size of, and that returns the size of whatever you give it in bytes. And so if I say size of incoming message, that will return however many, since this is a ubyte, which takes up the same amount of space as a byte, it's just a different way of arranging, or it's a different way of treating the bits. It will return 4. And so this returns 4. And so that will work. And so I could put another one there, and I can make that 5, I can put that a 5, and this will return 5. But I just want 4 for now. But there's one small caveat to this. If incoming message was an array of integers, an integer can hold a bigger number because it has more digits. It has 16 bits, or 2 bytes. This is going to return however many elements there are, times the length of each element. And so that'd be 8, because it's 4 times 2. But there aren't 8 elements, and so we should fix that too. And so I'll say, divided by the size of each element. And so the size of int is 2, and so this will divide 8 by 2. But that right there has to be the same as that right there. But we're not using it, so I'll just keep that back to ubyte. And you can keep that back to ubyte. Or, if you don't want to type all that, just put 4 there. But it's on you if you have to change it. That right there is a more efficient way of doing it. Alright, so we got that. And now inside here, we'll display stuff. And so you can go NXT, display string, and I want these like on a line, like going from top to bottom. So I is going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, and so those could be the line numbers. I'll say I, and then we'll do the content of our, the text, and I'll say like MSG, and then %D equals %D, and I'll explain this just a second. And then I'll say I, and incoming message I. Now, I've never showed you an instance where I use %D more than once, but it's actually pretty cool. The first %, whatever it is, like I could do %C or %F or %I, I'll just do %D. The first %, whatever it is, that looks at this variable right here. The next % after the first one looks at the next thing, which is incoming message I. And so what's going to appear on the screen will look something like MSG 0 equals, and like supposing that these programs are working, this will get sent, outgoing message will get sent, the first, or the 0th element is 1, that will get put into incoming message, so that'll be 1, and so incoming message 0 is going to be 1, and so that's what it's going to display, because I right here is 0, so it's going to display 0 right in there, and then incoming message 0 is going to be 1, and so that's what it's going to display. Hopefully this makes sense. If it doesn't quite make sense, then there are things online. Go at msdn.com. You can ask me a question about it, like send me a personal email, and or comment, and I'll get you fixed up. Alright, so that displays the actual information. Let's see, am I missing anything? I'll look at my notes. Oh, one more thing. Right now, if we just do this, it will draw, like the screen will not refresh, as in it won't erase itself, so that the next time it doesn't have already a background, so to speak. So we need to have erase display, because without that, you would say like MSG, and from the previous time, let's say that this number was like, well, let's say this number was like 5, but now it's 2, you would have the 5 and then 2 on top of it, which is sort of hard to read. And so that fixes things. And so I'll turn my NXTs on, and we'll get this party going. A slave isn't turning on, which normally means I gotta take the batteries out. It's getting old. It's been, had this thing for years, but yep, works now. Alright, and just put that back there. Technical difficulties. That's normal. Turning it off and turning it back on, that works. Okay, so we got that. We got UCAM, and I'll go ahead and start downloading. I'll download to the master, and so I need to make sure I get the master program on the master. F5. And then unplug the master, plug in slave. This happens to me all the time. I put both programs on one NXT instead and run old code on the other one. Alright, now that we got that, here's this. And I'll full screen it. So, I will start the master first, so that it'll connect, and you can see that when I start the slave, like initially all these are zeros. And then I'll yep, the beeping just connected, and they're still zeros. And I'll go to slave byte, and I'll run it. Bam, we got the values. And so that is how to send. That's how to do two-way communication over Bluetooth. On the slave program, you can just modify, like if I want to send something else besides 1, 2, 5, and 8, here I could say outgoing message 0 plus plus, like if I wanted to add one to 0 or the message, outgoing message 0, I could say it's 5 or 15.6, but I cannot do that because that is outside the bounds of a U-byte. Like, if you have, if let's just pretend like this was decimal and each byte could only hold 4 digits. If you had 10,000, then it's going to take those 4 digits, which would be 0. That's what's going on with 256. 256 in binary, it looks like that. It's got 8 zeros and a 1. And a byte just looks at those ones and it's like, oh, well, it must be 0. And so next tutorial, I will show how to give positive and negative numbers that are much bigger and much smaller than they're much bigger than the absolute value of 255. Or the absolute value of them is bigger than 255. Anyway, yeah. Next tutorial, bigger numbers, negative numbers. So yeah, two-way communication. If you got any questions or comments or yeah, just send them to my inbox or post a comment. Yeah, tell me what you think. And yeah, I will have another tutorial up hopefully soon. Bye.